My name is Jess and I'm the Marketing Manager at Pragmatic Solutions. Welcome to the Introducing Microsoft Forms Pro webinar this morning. In a second, I'm going to hand over to our Technical Director, Jamie, and he's going to go through the agenda and the rest of the demonstration with you. Just to let you know, the demo is going to run until about 11:30, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. The Q&A panel will be open throughout the webinar, so you should see it on the right-hand side of your screen. If you do have any questions, please submit them via that. We'll answer everything collectively towards the end. Just to let you know as well that this webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be sent out to everybody this afternoon. I'll now hand over to Jamie to take over.
Thanks, Jessica. Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to this webinar where I'll be introducing Microsoft's surveying solution, Microsoft Forms Pro. I'll be explaining what Forms Pro is all about, showcasing some of the key features and functionalities, and making it clear to you how you can use Forms Pro within your business. A little bit about myself. My name is Jamie Evans. I'm the Technical Director at Pragmatic Solutions. We are a Microsoft Dynamics 365 partner, specializing in designing and developing bespoke CRM systems and custom databases, with all our solutions leveraging Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. A little bit about the agenda today. The session will be split up into 3 sections. There'll be a short presentation where I'll be going through what is Microsoft Forms Pro, some of the high-level benefits and features, the business use cases where, from our experience, Forms Pro works well, and to give you a bit of inspiration where you could use it within your business. There'll be a demo where we'll get hands-on in the system. I'll be showing you some of the key features and functionalities. We'll go through the survey editor. We're working with themes and settings. I'll showcase how the survey interacts with Dynamics 365 and also showing you some of the analytics possibilities as well. And then there'll be a live Q&A, like Jessica mentioned, where you'll have a chance to ask some questions at the end. Okay, so what is Microsoft Forms Pro? Microsoft Forms Pro is a surveying tool that extends the basic survey capabilities of Microsoft Forms. So for those of you who have heard of or worked with Microsoft Forms before, maybe to send out a survey, maybe for data collection from stakeholders, or even embedding a contact form onto a website, there's some key differences between Forms and Forms Pro. Essentially, Forms Pro is a professional version of Microsoft Forms and comes with some additional functionality. It interacts with Microsoft Dynamics 365. For those of you who don't know what Microsoft Dynamics 365 is Microsoft's business application platform that comes with purpose-built applications such as sales, customer service, project service automation, field service, and marketing. And I'll explain a little bit more about the interaction and the benefits of that a little bit later in this session. Another additional feature is there are multiple ways in which the survey can be sent out. The main one to mention here is the use of Power Automate, which is another Microsoft application, which is a comprehensive workflow engine where the surveys can be automatically sent out based on triggers in Dynamics 365 or other Microsoft applications. There are increased analytics as well. So as standard, there are improved analytics that you got with Forms. So you get improved dashboards and reports with Forms Pro. And you can also use Power BI as well, which is Microsoft's business intelligence suite, to visualize and gain better insights into the survey data. A little mention about pricing. So for those of you who are already using Microsoft Dynamics 365, if you have an enterprise license, so a sales, customer service, field service or project service automation enterprise license, you get Forms Pro included, where you'll get 2,000 responses per month per organization included in your licensing. And then you can also top up with that per month for £75.40 for an additional 2,000 responses. A point to mention here as well is that this webinar focuses mainly on the interaction with Dynamics 365, but Forms Pro can be used standalone. You'd obviously not be able to use and leverage some of the key features with the interaction with Dynamics 365. Okay, so a little bit about the benefits and features. Why use Microsoft Forms Pro? So to gain insights into the satisfaction of your customers, you get instant feedback from your customers, how happy they are with your company, your products and your service, and you get an overall feeling about how the overall satisfaction of your customer base. You get quick responses to negative feedback. There are ways to be notified if there are negative feedback on a response. so that you can deal with that promptly and professionally. There's ways that an email can be sent to a manager, or a task can be put in someone's task list to follow up with that negative feedback and deal with it right away. You can also identify trends and improvement areas. It might be that a trend on a particular time of the year, so it might be seasonal trends on the feedback, or on the feedback to your services. It might be the times of the day, or even the days of the week. And you can also identify improvement areas that may be certain products or services, or even employees within the business that are getting negative feedback and need to maybe have some extra training or look into those products and services in more detail. You can also reduce admin around survey management. With all the extra capabilities around automating the sending of surveys and automatically analysing responses, it saves time where a human would need to administer surveys, and you can drive automation there, increasing efficiency and productivity. From a feature side of things, there is also what we call question branching and logic. This is a nice functionality where the surveys can be dynamic. So questions or groups of questions can be shown or hidden based on other answers to questions. It could be that if you wanted to, if you got a rating that was less than 2, then, or less than 3, for example, then another group of questions gets shown, so you can then get some more feedback on that negative feedback. You can also personalize surveys with variables, so you can actually pass, for example, the name of the person you're sending it to, or it could be the case ID or the title, for example. So the person receiving the invite knows what they are responding to, and it gives them a bit of context before they submit their response. Integration into Dynamics 365. This is one of the main features here. When you work with Forms Pro and Microsoft Dynamics 365 together, the data from the surveys, the invites, the responses, comes back into Dynamics 365 as a record against the contact or the records such as the case or the order. This is great, as it means that the data around your customers is stored in one common platform and removes any data silos that other surveying tools have created in the past. And then finally, we have those improved analytics. We have some standard dashboards and reports that give good insights into the feedback from your customers, but you can also leverage, again, Power BI to do some further analytics into that data. Okay, then we have the business use cases. So where can we use Microsoft Forms Pro effectively? One example within customer service is the case completion. So there could be a scenario that you want to send out a survey to a customer once a case has been resolved, and the person on the contact on the case would receive the invite and also respond, and that data would come back into the case and be stored against the case and the contact in Dynamics. The other one is where you've got an order that's been delivered or fulfilled. The contact on the order would receive an invite, and also the response would come back into Dynamics against the order and on the contact record. The final one here is the event feedback. So if you're running event management, you maybe have a marketing application or another event management module. If an event has finished, it's been finalized, you might want to send out some feedback to the participants. So there's just a few examples there where Forms Pro works well, but there's many other scenarios that you could use within your business. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into the demonstration itself. So I'm just going to jump into Forms Pro. But before I start, for those of you who have used Forms before, you'll be familiar with Forms here. But if you haven't, you would get a Forms option here that you click, and it would take you through to the Forms application. So you see Microsoft Forms Pro. If you've used Forms before, it might take you directly to Forms. There is a way, if you click on the top right hand corner on your profile, you can switch between Forms and Forms Pro there. So that's something to bear in mind. And up the top right hand corner, you also have the environment. So if you are working with, if you have Dynamics 365 and you're working with multiple environments, you need to make sure that you are working with the correct environment here. We have quite a few environments. I'm working in the demo environment at the moment. And then what I can then see is that I have the surveys that are been shared with me, all the ones where I have created the surveys themselves. So you can see here you have an option to create a new survey, but these are the ones that are in the list already that I've created. So I'm going to go into one of those surveys now to show you some of the survey editor and some of the main features. So I'm going to click into this survey here. What we can see at the top is we have a header where we can upload a logo. Our logo is better sort of horizontal, but you could also have the logo if it fits on the left hand side of the title, so it reduces the size of the header. You can also see we've got a title here, and then we put a subtitle here where we say, please take 2 minutes to provide your feedback from the case. And this is where we have a variable I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. This is where we can pass the case ID to the survey when it's being sent, so the person receiving it knows what case they are responding about. Okay, then we go into the question here. So we have different types of questions. We have the rating question. We have a question where you can ask for multiple lines of text. You have a like it question type where you can put some characteristics down the left hand side and ask them to rate it based on a certain scale. You have another rating one here with different types. So this is smileys, some more input here, and then we have a net promoter score one here where you can say how likely would you recommend us to a friend or a colleague. So this is just a showcase, an already pre-built survey with some of the questions in here. But I'm going to go and add a new question so you can see how straightforward it is to add a new question. So I'm going to click on the add new. I get a pop-up to either pick multiple choice. You have text, which is the multiple lines of text. You have the rating that we showed you. You could have asked for a particular date, and you also get some other options here where you can go more. You can have a ranking, so you can rank certain points in order. You have the like it that we talked about. You have the net promoter score, and then you have the section as well. So if you're working with larger surveys with multiple, lots of questions, you can actually design it into sections, so it takes the user through different sections when they're filling out certain questions. So you can group questions within sections and order those sections accordingly. Okay, so what I'm just going to go and create one is I'm actually going to go and pick choice here. So I'll go and create a new question, and it pops up. I can put the question here. So I'll say, are there any improvement areas? So improvement areas, and then we can list for our service. Just type in the question there, and you can list some of the options here. So I could say speed, for example. I could say ability, just as two examples there. You also, what's really nice with the choice questions, you get the add other. So instead of having to click other and then put a field in there, it actually just puts one in there where you can type in that says other. Some of the options you have is to actually select multiple answers. You can make it that the question is required. You can also put in some make it as a drop down and a subtitle. So there's quite a few options there, and you can see once I click off it, that question is nicely added there with the options and then the other option at the end. If I click into a already created one, which is the rating, you see you have options around the rating. So I can switch between a number, we can do smileys. I can also increase the amount of levels. So the rating is 1 to 10 or 1 to 4. You have flexibility around that. So that's really, really straightforward to create a survey and add those questions in. And then what you get once you've added those questions in is you get a preview option, which is good to see how the customer is going to see the survey before you send it out. So if I click on the preview option here, what we get is we get the desktop version, and then we also get mobile. So you'll notice on the desktop version that you actually get to see some space around on the right and left of the survey, which I'll explain about in a minute. But then when you click to mobile, it's then condensed into it's sort of responsive for a mobile version. I think Microsoft done a really good job on the mobile side to make it really easy to fill out on the mobile and make it look good as well. Okay, so I'm just going to switch back to the editor, and I'm going to go on to themes. So this is how the look and feel of the survey. So I'm going to click on theme, and you can see you have some options to add some standard colors. We've uploaded the Pragmatic Solutions branding color here, so you can do the same for your colors. But what you also get is an option to put a graphic in the background. So if I click on this one, for example, it has a certain color scheme, but it also puts a graphic in the background. So you could actually design one for your business to maybe have your logo, some key information in there. It could be awards or any logos you want to present in here. But do bear in mind that when you go to the preview, only people will see that when they're on the desktop version. When you go to the mobile, that background is hidden. So a majority of people will probably, or it depends on your customer base, you'll know them better than I do, but it depends on, if you predominantly people using mobile, then I wouldn't necessarily say to go to the effort of creating that particular graphic for the background. I'm just going to go and switch back to the pragmatic colors, keep it nice and simple, and that's to show you the theme. And then I'm going to go on to some of the settings. So click on the 3 dots in the top right hand corner. We can share this survey to other people. So you give a link here where you can share to other people in the organization to collaborate on it. You'll be able to copy it and send that link to someone internally, and then they will then be able to see it in their shared to me section, and they'll be able to collaborate on that particular survey. We also have survey variables. So I talked about that with the case ID briefly, but if I just click on it, certain variables can be defined to be able to pass values to the survey. And this is really good because it makes the survey dynamic, and it makes it dynamic and you can personalize. So I could pass the first name in there. I could have multiple variables. Maybe I want the case title, or maybe I want the name of the customer service representative, and I can pass that to there. So when the customer receives it, it gives them some context about what they're actually responding to. Then we have the branching rules. So we have a rule in place on this survey to say, if there is negative experience, show the details of experience field. So I'm just going to click into that to see what you can experience. So there is an actual condition you can put in place to say, if the question is how you rate the experience of your latest case is less than rating 3, I want to show another question where they have to provide more details of their experience. And likewise, if it's greater than 3, it will hide that question. So let's go and see that in operation, so you can see how that works. Just before I go on to that though, there are some other actions here. So you can actually navigate to, based on an answer to a question, you could navigate to another sub-survey, or you could also go to an external URL as well. So that's some nice feature, a nice feature there. So let's go back to the survey itself, and I'm going to go to preview, and I'm going to answer the first question, and I'm going to give it a rating of 4. So what you'll notice is that particular question disappears because I'm happy with that response. 4, I don't need to receive any more feedback. But if someone was to answer a question as rating 2, it then asks for another question appears and asks for some extra information about that particular feedback that you've just given. So that's nice to make the survey dynamic and building that logic there. Okay, so I'll go back now. So that's some of the that's branching rules. Multilingual is that you can send surveys, obviously, in multiple languages. If you're if you have your customer base is multinational, you can use different languages. And then there's a settings option here with quite a few settings that you can define. I'll just go through a few of them. So we can say only people in my organization can respond. So if you're sending an internal survey, it blocks it from anyone external to be able to respond to it. You might want to shuffle questions. You might want to customize the thank you message. You might want to customize the footer text. You might even want to put an end date on the survey. So if you have links that are published on the web or on your social channels, you might want to make sure that if someone clicks it after the end date, they can't actually put a response in. You might want to put a maximum number of responses there. So you might say we only need 500 responses to do the job, so we'll keep it as the maximum response. And you might want to say this should only run for a number of days as well. You can also put a notification in to get a notification of each response. And there's also a way of adding an additional email address in here to send from, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the final option down here, show progress bar. So as I said, as I showed you, you can actually create sections of groups of questions. And if you've got a long survey that might be 30 plus questions with 5 different sections, it's good for the user to see a progress bar to see how far they are into the survey and how far they've got to go before they complete it. Okay, so that's some of the settings there. I'm now going to move on to how a survey can be sent and go through the options there. But before I do that, I'm just going to switch back to my other survey here, which is this one, which is a copy, but it's just got some different settings in it. So I'm just going to click on send. And then what we have here is 5 options to be able to send a survey. So I'm just going to briefly go over them, and then I'll show you a couple of the features. So we have email. You can send an email to that records within Dynamics 365, maybe a group of records, or even import a list of email addresses and contacts to be able to send a particular survey to people. We can use Power Automate, where we can configure a flow to automatically send out the survey, and I'll show that in a second. You can embed a form onto a website. You can send a link to an individual or group of people, or publish a link on a social channel or a website where people can click on it and start to fill out the survey. And then there's also an option there to scan a QR code for people working on tablets and mobiles. But I'll just go on to the email first. So if I click on the email option, what we get here is, first thing is we get the from, and it says Jamie Evans via Microsoft Forms Pro. So the default email it sends from is email.formspro.microsoft.com. There are ways of changing that to your own domain, but there is a technical request needs to go into Microsoft, and there's a bit of a technical work around it. So it's not always the easiest thing, but there is an option there to do that. And then we come on to the to section where you can enter the recipients. Now this is the part where it really starts to interact with Dynamics 365. So for example, if I was to type in the name Charles Rose, that person will come up in the database. It recognizes that person. It's looking into the Dynamics database to find that person. I might want to send it to someone called Sharon Shivers as well. And it's found Sharon Shivers there in the list. Now, if I send that, that will send that to those 2 people in Dynamics, but it'll also put that invite on their record in Dynamics 365, which I'll show you in a second. So that's sending it to individual people. But I might also want to send it to a group of people that have a list of people stored in Dynamics. So if I just quickly switch to Dynamics 365 to show you that, I'm in the Customer Service Hub, and I go on to Contacts. I have a view here that's been saved called Contacts Follow, and there are 3 people in this list here. But for you, there might be hundreds of people in the list you want to send it to. So we go back to Forms Pro, and if I type in Contacts and then Follow, you'll see I have these lists here that I can select. So I can select this list in Dynamics, and then from Dynamics, and then if I send that, it will then send that invite to all those people in that list. There are also ways of uploading, so I can import recipients from a CSV file. It has to be in a certain format. So if you have external data source with the people you want to send it to, you can also upload it to the survey itself. Okay, we can come on to the subject. So we also have a way of defining an email template. So when a survey is sent directly via email or through Power Automate, we can then define a certain template. Now I'm just going to switch to the template here where it's defined, where it has the subject as Pragmatic Solutions customer feedback survey invite as the title of the email. We've designed it in a certain way, and we've also embedded the first question here as well, which is a nice feature. So when the customer receives that email, they'll see the first question there. They can actually answer the first question from the email. There's also a way as well of passing variables, so first name, last name, case ID into the template, and you can create multiple templates as well and save them so they can be used again and again. Okay, so I'm just going to send this one now to these contacts, and I can click send, and then that will then say, congratulations, your survey has been sent to the following recipients. Okay, so that was one way of sending via email. If I then go back to send and go to Power Automate, this is another way in which the automated way of sending them out. So what we'll see here, it gets a little bit technical with Power Automate, so I'm just going to explain it briefly. But we've got one flow configured here where it sends a survey when a case is resolved in Dynamics 365. And I can see here there's been 23 successful runs and there've been no failures. So this is something that's been configured that when a case is resolved, it will automatically send out the survey. So I'm going to go and show you that now when I jump to Dynamics 365. So I'm going to go back over to Dynamics into the Customer Service Hub, and I'm going to go to the list of my active cases. If I click into this record here, it'll show me the record with some of the information, and I'll go through and I can see here that I have a particular customer. It's ABC Installation Services, and there's a contact here called Thomas Graves. So if I go to resolve this case now, it will then automatically send a survey to Thomas Graves to fill out the information about this case. So I'm going to click resolve, and then I get a pop-up to say, I'll just say resolved, and then I've got 15 minutes on there, and then click resolve. So the case then gets closed down, and what's going to happen now is that flow is going to trigger, and it's automatically going to send it to Thomas Graves. So, and it'll also put the survey invite on the case in Dynamics itself. So when I click onto Thomas Graves record, I'll then be able to see that invite on there when I click through. So I'm going to click through to Thomas Graves, and I can see straight away here we have Pragmatic Solutions Customer Feedback Survey invite as a record on Thomas's timeline. If I go back to the case, I'll also see that invite on the case because it's related to the case, so you can see it from both sides. But let me go back to Thomas, and I'll go through and click so you can see what you can see here. So I would click Open Record, I click on Open Record, and I can see some information about the actual invite, who it was sent from, the status of it, has it been replied yet, etc. Okay, and I've just had a notification to say that the email has come through. So I'll just open up that email so you can see it, and I'll drag this over to the screen. So you can see a new email has come through. I'll just download the pictures, and you can see here, how would you rate your experience of your last case? And I'll click on the 4, and then what that does, it takes me through to the Forms Pro, so you can see how it's been filled out. So now you can see here, the first question has already been answered. The other question has been hidden because I've got a score over 4. And another point to make here is that I actually have the case ID being passed to the survey as a variable. So you can see how that works. I can then just quickly fill out, all very good. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm going to put no other comments, and I'm going to highly recommend Pragmatic Solutions to a friend or a colleague. And I'm going to click submit, and then I get a notice here to say thank you for your response. If I now go back into Dynamics 365 and I'll refresh on Thomas's record, what I'll get is another entry here to say that we've had a response. Now this is where it's really good that you see the actual response details on the record in Dynamics. So I can go and search for all the responses for a particular survey, or I can actually go onto Thomas's record like I'm on now and see that information there and then. So if I go and click on this particular record, what you actually get to see is some high-level information, but you also get to see how Thomas actually put in this information. So I can see the rating, I can graphically see how he scored it, if he put any comments in here, the ratings itself, and at the bottom I actually get each individual question as a record in Dynamics. Now that's really good because it allows us to, or it allows you to actually drive some automation there, like I mentioned at the start. If there is a particular negative feedback on a question, or there is an overall general score that is poor, then you can drive some automation by sending an email to a manager or putting a task into someone's task list to follow up with that particular response and that customer. So that shows you how it can be worked within Dynamics and how that data gets stored in Dynamics as well as in Microsoft Forms. So the last thing I'm going to show you is just go back into Microsoft Forms Pro, into the actual survey itself, and show you some of the responses and the invites analytics. So I'm going to go through to the response section, and I can see here, I'm actually going to switch back to the other one quickly, just go through to this one and then responses, and I can see here there's been 17 invitations, there's been 21 responses. So the reason why that is high is because the invitations, when it's been sent to an individual person that we know about, so someone that's been stored in Dynamics 365 or in other Microsoft applications, but there can also be extra responses of people who may have clicked on a link on our social channels, etc. to fill out those responses. So I go on to invitations and I get some analytics. I can see in the list here who has actually responded. I can see the source. Was it sent by Power Automate? Was it sent by email? And I can get a status in here. Have they responded, or has it been sent, or has it been started by somebody as well? But we get here as well as some embedded Power BI here, where you get the average amount of time that people take to respond. Have there been any failed invitations, invitation status, and then a invitation trend over a time period. So that's some information about the invitations. But then I go on to the responses. I then get some further analytics around the responses as well. So the average time it took for someone to respond, to fill in the survey, the response ratio, some net porter scores, etc. And I get to see all the people who've been responded. A point to mark out here is that response type is quite key. So if we know about the person, if they're in Dynamics, that particular response is tracked, and that's where the data comes back into Dynamics and puts the response in Dynamics. However, if they are anonymous, so they might have clicked a link, or they've scanned a QR code, or they've filled out a form that's been embedded into a website, that then becomes an anonymous person because we don't know who they are until they fill it out. There are ways of capturing that information during the survey, and then we can then automatically turn them into contacts in the Dynamics database. But as standard, they are anonymous to us until they fill out the form. Okay, and I'm just going to last thing I'm going to show on the analytics side that we have a question-wide analysis. So this is where there has been a per question. We get a breakdown per question of the actual scores or how people have responded. So I can get an overall rating across all of the surveys. I get the Likert score here, so I can see how people have been rating the different characteristics. And we get a breakdown basically per question there, which is nice. That can be, it can be analysed. You can also click on these as well, so they're actually reactive. You click on it, it'll then show how everyone who rated star 5 also answered the rest of the questions itself. Okay, so that was the that sums up that finalises the demo side of the survey. I'll just switch back to the presentation. So if anyone has any questions towards Microsoft Forms Pro or even Dynamics 365, please feel free to reach out to us at marketing@pragmaticsolutions.co.uk, but you'll also have the chance now to ask any questions during the Q&A. At that point, I'll hand back over to you, Jessica, for the Q&A.
Thank you, Jay. We will now open the floor to any questions. So if anybody has anything to ask, please type in the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll give it a minute for something to come through. Okay, it looks like we've had a couple come in. So the first question is, how are the unsubscribes managed if using external data sources to email survey as shown? So I'll hand that over to Jay for answer.
Yeah, could you repeat that again, please, Jessica?
Yeah, it says, how are the unsubscribes managed if using external data sources to the email survey?
So the unsubscribed, there is an option to unsubscribe. There's an unsubscribed link that you can embed into the email template when it's sent out. So they can unsubscribe from the list by clicking it. But there's also ways of using Power Automate as well to unsubscribe people from the contact list when it comes back into Dynamics 365.
Okay, and the second question that we've had is, can you use the same survey over again, or do you have to create a new one for every campaign?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way it's designed, if you're going to have the same survey that's not going to change, you're not going to add questions, you're not going to take questions away, you can actually use the same survey over and over again. And there's some good features in there where you can actually do some time. If you wanted to do some trend analysis on the survey, you can report over a time period to say, what was the feedback over this particular time period. So yeah, the answer to the question is you can use the same survey over and over again, as long as you're not going to change the survey.
Okay, that's great. It doesn't look like we've had anything else come through, but if anybody does think of anything, then please feel free to contact us using the details that you can see on the screen. Just to reiterate, our email is marketing@pragmaticsolutions.co.uk. you can call us on 01908 038 11. I'm also about to pop a link to our webinar survey in the Q&A panel, which is actually made using Microsoft Forms Pro. So if you do wish to provide your feedback on the webinar today, you can do so through here. I hope you found our webinar useful. As I mentioned before, this has been fully recorded, so it will be sent to your email this afternoon. I will get that over right away. And if you do have any questions, then feel free to contact us. Thank you for joining, and I hope you have a good day.